What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 5 of the Quick Snap podcast here after a Thursday night game. So it's been a few days. We're here with our boy DA. What's up,
Yep.
pal?
What's up, baby? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Not a best performance Thursday night, and it is what it is. It happens. It obviously. We always talk about quick turnaround. Well, it wasn't that quick of a turnaround this weekend. But, got a good day in there today, some good work, and kind of a little bit of a bonus day, and cleaned it up and looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we talked last week, okay, quick turnaround, you got to get healthy. Sometimes those are good nights, sometimes they're not. And that's, the NFL, like you always, the thing that always strikes me is what Dante would say, the other team gets a vote too.
Yeah.
And, the one thing that I took away, I know it wasn't a great performance, but there was one drive where there was a good play action pass. There was a pass, I think Pop Douglas caught it. Then you ran a screen, and you get down the red area, but then you start going backwards. Those are the things that we always talk about. You can't win until you keep from losing.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, right? We talked about, formula, winning formula, all that, and we did exactly not that this weekend or this week. Turned the ball over, went backwards, whether it was negative plays or penalties. They're one and the same. It's not like one's better than the other. So, and it was one of those games where it wasn't like, we struggled here. Like, we just struggled, and no one did anything good enough. Start with me. And one of those games where, you kind of got away from what we were having success in for different reasons. And, and that's fine. It is what it is, and I think, just want to go back to playing how we play. We've seen, obviously Seattle, and we talked about there's no moral victories, but, you're in plays to win that game, and we didn't even give ourselves a shot Thursday night. So, going back to how we want to play, things like that, and that's kind of what we touched on today, right? Like, what are our non-negotiables as a team, and what are we, and we did not do those on Thursday night, and that'll get you beat versus, like we said, a really good team with a really good defense and a really good quarterback. And hats off to them. They had a great scheme. They were ready to go. We weren't, and like I said, it starts with guys like me and things like that. So, it was just one of those nights where it's not a good night, and, but like I said, you get the chance to rewrite that here on Sunday.
Yeah, a lot to learn from.
Yeah.
There's always a lot to learn from, but like we said, sometimes when you win, it's not as glaring. But when you lose, especially that way, it's like, okay, like what you just said, we have to get back to who we are, the identity that we are, block out the external noise. I know from my side of it, people are saying they got to throw the ball down the field, they got to do all those things. Well, the first 2 weeks, you guys won the first game and we're in it the second game. And so sometimes you just got to be who you are and go out and execute and do those things. And so now, like you said, a chance to reset. You have a long weekend. Everybody gets to get away from football for a few days, come back. You talk about a bonus day for the people out there that don't know. Usually you play on Sunday, you come in Monday, you review the game, and maybe you get a little head start on the next week's opponent.
But you're not practicing.
But you're not practicing. So for you guys, you talk about a bonus day. You were off Friday, Saturday, Sunday per league rules. You come back in and you get an extra bonus day of practice because you've had some rest recovery. So you practice today, tomorrow will be off.
Yeah. You couldn't on a normal week. You couldn't practice on Monday. It's hard enough to try to get going on a Wednesday. It's hard for guys to even make, like I said, that's a 3-day turnaround. It's still hard, and there's a lot of things that, like, maybe a guy's not ready to go Wednesday, but he's going to be ready to go Thursday or, even Friday. Or maybe he can do a little Thursday, Friday should be ready to go. So,
which comes in huge when you're traveling West Coast because now, like you said, you get a little bonus day. You're a little ahead when you come back on Wednesday, which allows you to get a little ahead on Thursday, which allows you to get a little ahead on Friday, and then you travel out to San Francisco.
Yeah, and I've always honestly enjoyed, like, so we said typical Monday run, lift, like a recovery run, lift, meet, that's it. And they're long days because,
there's a lot to watch.
But, you're not practicing. But I've always enjoyed the bonus day practice because you kind of took some time off and you're kind of like, all right, let's get out there. Let me kind of rework. Even if you win or lost on Thursday, not taking that into account, just in general terms, like, let me get out there, move around a little bit, work on my football skills again. Because you know how it gets. Some days if you take, like, 5, like if you're hurt, right, or something,
it's harder to come back.
You're coming back that first day and you're like, oh, like how do I set, like, and all this or whatever. So just doing some of that, like on a day like today, I've always enjoyed in my career. Come back out there, and especially on a day where he didn't have a game like he went to Thursday. You're like, just let me play football again. Like, let me try to fix that. Yeah. And like you kind of saying, like the worst thing that could happen on Thursday if we don't learn from what we did.
Right.
It happened. There's nothing we can change that, but now we can change going forward. Versus a really good defense, a really good football team in San Fran. So, excited for those opportunities. Like I said, it pisses you off and things like that, and to have to go through those things. But sometimes those are good, and to correct those things, learn those things, and move forward.
Yeah. Let's talk about the offensive line a little bit. Yeah. Obviously you're the captain of that unit, but for the third week, due to injuries, a whole nother unit being out there. Caden Wallace playing left tackle last week, who had never really played that position before. Just talk about how, because the one, I think, of all the positions in all of football, the one that actually plays like a true unit is the offensive line. Defensive line, they're rotating through, but usually for the most part,
you got offensive
line, it's 5 guys, and they're there every single play throughout the entire game. And just talk about how that has to come together, and when it's different people each week, not to anyone's fault of their own due to injury, whatever it might be, you're constantly trying to create that unit, and talk about how he filled in and going forward, being the leader of that group, what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, obviously, like when you're playing, right, and I think when you're watching things and like, there's some things where like, all right, that's an ME and that's super frustrating, and then there's, sometimes you get beat. It's like, man, like that, you obviously it's not okay and you have to coach it, but like, like we said, they're good players too, but I think when you watch it as a player, you're just like, man, like, I wish I could have done that better, and like for whatever reason, and I don't know why as a player, but like sometimes you go out there and you watch yourself like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
That's not.
Why would I throw that pass?
Yeah, and I don't like. I think like, people watch it like, oh, they whatever, but like as a player, you're sitting there and you're like, man, I don't know why I did what I did, and that's like the constant battle of like trying to get better and figure that out. And I think sometimes, it's part of this league where guys get hurt and things like that. You wish you could have, I'm trying to think if I've ever had a year where we had the same 5 guys start every game.
I mean, it's probably pretty impossible to do, especially that position.
Maybe like, like a guy like missing a game here and there, but like, I don't know if there's ever been a year where it's like, all right, the same 5 guys started, and that's tough. And there's just not a lot of depth in the NFL. Like, I mean, dude, you take 7 to 8 linemen on game day, and it's wild how that works. But look, we got to get better, and that's what we're going to try to do, and that's what I'm going to try to do. I've always tried to do that, is every week just try to get better. And like I said, it's 1 week seasons, and learn from last week, put it behind you, and now get ready to go. And this is going to be a whole nother, call it bag of issues. Like, there's a different team, different players, all this stuff. So, there's a lot to learn from, a lot to improve on. And like I said, I think for me, like, I just want to play the game how we should play it.
Right.
And I think as a player, you've been in those situations where you lose a game and you're still pissed, you're still frustrated, and there's still plays you could have done better, but you're like, you know what, I kind of threw my best punch. And I definitely feel like we didn't do that Thursday. And so, like, not that it's easier or whatever, but like, it's just, man, like when you don't play the way you want to play, those are a lot harder than being like, you know what, hey, we went out there, played the best we could, we had a shot to win, whatever. So, that's what we'll try to do this week.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, new scheme, et cetera. They're coming off of 2 tough losses. A team that was a few plays away from winning the Super Bowl last year with a lot of continuity. So obviously they're trying to get back on track too. Just talk about the week of preparation, how you shift that mindset after being off for a few days. You talk about a bonus day, getting in the film room, learning these guys. Not a team that the Patriots play very often.
Every 4 years.
Yeah, and so similar like we talked about with Seattle, you got to get to know these guys a little bit. You got to know, their scheme, but also their players. and you've already got a head start. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah,
on that?
obviously a really good football team. Jay touched on it a little bit about their defense. Things. Brock Purdy's really playing really well. A lot of playmakers. Whether it's I know McCaffrey's still kind of dealing with this thing, but Jordan Mason. To me, watching San Francisco's offense, it seems like it all starts in the run game.
Of course.
And they do a lot of different things where I'm watching it and I'm like, it kind of looks and I'm a football junkie, so I enjoy watching it. And it's like, well, it kind of looks the same, but it's not. And it's this and it's that, and it's a lot of moving parts. And so being a fan and watching offense, like I think they do a really good job. Obviously Ayuk, Kittle, Trent Williams. I mean, you look around their roster, they got star players at every position. So another team where if they get the ball and they're rolling on offense, they're going to be good. And then defensively, you kind of do the same thing. You look at, all right, on the edge they got Bosa. Inside, they got Collins and Hargraves.
Yep. Fred Warner.
I think probably be hard pressed to say a better linebacker than Fred Warner.
He's probably the best linebacker right now.
Yeah, I mean, you maybe make an argument for someone else.
We
but
practiced
he's
against those guys last year, so like how when you join practices, you kind of when you're out there playing a game, everything's happening so fast. So but when you're at joint practices, there's some lulls. You're walking over, you're talking, and I was like, this guy, he's 6'4". He's big. He's fast. He plays the game like when now that I'm watching as a fan full time, he plays the game the right way. In my opinion, he's a heat-seeking missile. He plays hard 100% of the time.
That's the thing. He can cover the field.
Yeah,
something. Like I said, it's not like I watch San Francisco every year to break down their film, but just watching, and the little bit I've delved into, like he just covers the field and. So it's one of those games where you got to be good on all levels. Like we talked about, sometimes it feels like, hey, this cornerback's really good. We'll try to avoid him, and like their linebackers aren't as good, but they're deep, like whatever it may be that week. This is one where you look like they're just very good at every level.
They have like a top caliber player at every. They have D-line, linebackers, safety. They got Ofanga. Outside they have Ward. So they, like you're saying, and then so. For you guys to bounce back and just get back to who you are, that's probably the key. It's one thing to worry about the other team, but for you guys to establish back to your identity and take that on the road will be huge.
I think that's the thing. Is just be who we are. Let's not do anything. No one, and I think as players too, like no one has to do anything special. Like let's do our jobs well. Most importantly, and execute and. That's really what it comes down to each week. You look at, the NFL, you can look around games this week, right? Like Carolina going into Las Vegas and doing what they did or, whatever you want to say, like different games. The everyone say the Texans are really good, explode like all this. And
I think there were 7 underdog teams that won underdog. Us as players or former player, we always say like, I never really felt like underdog. That doesn't mean anything to us. The line
has nothing to do with
because we all know if you're a player that's played long enough, you all know that any team can beat any team on any given day.
And so you watch a lot of those. First of all, have you ever watched NFL Red Zone?
Well, now that's all I do because I have to know all this stuff.
Dude, I had the Sunday off, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch NFL football. Dude, I had the Red Zone on. At like 4 o'clock, I was like,
dude, can you imagine that guy does that all day?
Dude, I was exhausted. Scott Hansen, right?
No, Scott Hansen.
Dude, I was exhausted. My brain was like rattled. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
can you imagine Scott Hansen just does that all day?
No, I don't know how people do that every week.
But it's intense because it's really like the meaningful plays in the game.
I know,
you know
it was
what I mean?
training, man. Yeah. But I mean, you look around the league, right? Like we were saying, like it doesn't matter. Like that's what makes this league so great. I think we've talked about it before. That's why the betting and all the stuff that fans love, fantasy football, like all that stuff that like, players we don't really pay attention to, are not involved in, but like, obviously all that stuff helps us with revenue and things like that. But it's so just there's so much parity around the league. Anything can happen each week. And, you look at games, like I was kind of watching that, the San Fran Rams game, and you're like, oh, like San Fran's kind of running away. And then, you're not really watching the game because of Red Zone. You're all over the place. And then you're like, whoa, it's tied up and now it's this. And, so that stuff around the league, man, it's really I just think there's all these statistics. Every game can be close and decided by like 3 or less points or something, or one score games. So, lucky to be a part of it because it's such a great league and the movie title Any Given Sunday, man.
That's right. Okay, so we talked about what you're expecting from those guys, their team. Just talk a little bit about traveling West Coast because, like you said, it doesn't happen very often, and you're going to leave. Gerard told the media today you guys are leaving Friday, and I know we'll probably ask Jay Jones about it, but just sometimes those trips really help a team come together because. You're out on the road, you're with your guys. You don't feel bad about maybe, taking time away from your family because they're not there. And so sometimes I think these are critical points in the season, especially early on, to maybe come together as a team.
Yeah, I think that's something different that I had no idea about once I got to the NFL. The travel part of it. Because in college, like, now I guess it's a little different because it's so the Pac-12 is part of the Big Ten, whatever, all that. But like when you were at Michigan State, like
short trip,
like hour to like our farthest flight was Missouri,
right?
It was like 3 states away. It felt like.
You played Missouri, and they were the SEC when you were playing. Wow, you are.
I think they came in maybe our second year. I don't know, but like that was our longest trip. And now you're like, man, like, and I don't know how bad it will be this week, but like we played the Jets Thursday night. You get home at 4:30 in the morning, and I think we've talked about that before. So I think that's something I just didn't understand when I got to the league. Is like, dude, that takes a toll on you at some point. But I enjoy the West Coast trips, man. I enjoy if you go out. We've played back-to-back games out there. You stay for a week. I've always enjoyed that stuff, man. Being with the guys, like Saturday night or Saturday during the day after meetings, we're all going to be watching college football together, like hanging out together, talking shit to each other about who's winning, who's losing. Like,
well, I remember one time
that stuff's fun, like that, and you miss out on that stuff a little bit. So I enjoy them. I think you try to stay on your schedule, your routine, however you do it, can keep that consistent.
Yeah, early in my career, I remember, like you mentioned, coming from college. We were playing the Oakland Raiders at the time. And so we flew out, and you talk about we had meetings, and then college football out there starts at like 9 a.m. Yeah. And Julian, was from that area. He's like, hey, why don't you guys come over? Like his dad grilled steak tacos for us. It was a bunch of us at his house where he grew up. And, that's just one of those things that you don't really get in college because you're short trips, you're in and out. And, creating that bond that you don't really have because everybody goes home to their families is always a fun thing to do.
Yeah, last time we played San Fran in 2016, well, I guess it would have been the last time we were out there, 2016, Julian took us to this German, maybe, or I don't know where it was, some like restaurant, and they just like served you all this meat. And he was like, you guys got to go. It was Julian and all the old line. And it was funny. We had a great time. It was a good meal. Julian was like, come on, and you guys got to go. And I was like, where are we going?
Yeah.
I remember that from the
but
last time.
But it is too cool too because sometimes you go on a trip and someone on your team's from that city and it's like they get to share that city with the rest of the team. Like, hey, I know a good restaurant. Yeah. Let's go here. Now, I'll say this: having played on multiple teams, in New England, we've always traveled a little bit different than the rest of the teams because we get in late. Bill would make it so you couldn't really go out to eat. But other teams that I've been on. You get there early enough where, meetings might not be till 8, you get in at 4, you get a group of guys together, go out and have dinner together. And those are the moments like you talk about, like that team bonding, which is nice. And now you guys will get a whole day of that on Saturday.
No, I've enjoyed them. And, like you said, it's something, it's a team you don't get to play a lot. Just look forward to that. And obviously a great opportunity, for us this weekend.
All right. Going to do a new segment here.
Okay, all right.
Quick snap. So we're just going to shout out a question, and you got to give an answer right off the top of your head.
All right.
All right. This is from producer Danny. So some of these are pretty good, I think.
I don't know about that.
All right. Best locker room DJ.
Actually, our guest, Jay Jones. I think Jay plays, a good mix. Some of this new rap is just like, I don't know.
So he's doing some old school.
Yeah, he does some old, and he's got, like, I grew up, outside of Atlanta, so like the old school Atlanta rappers and stuff like that. So, I think Jay Jones will throw a little country in the mix too. So,
I like it.
That's kind of up my alley. So, I think Jay Jones is definitely the best.
All right. Funniest guy on the team.
Man, I think that's got to be B-More. One, because today he was in the cafeteria saying he wanted double eggs.
What's double eggs?
Hard-boiled eggs. And just he's got this like accent.
Yeah, he's got that voice. Yeah, I know.
All this stuff, and just B-More's a funny dude. I think. Let me see. I think. Pep's pretty funny. Pep's up there.
Yeah, he is funny.
He does a good job. I think O-linemen. I think naturally O-linemen are the funniest group to be around.
I mean, I've definitely had some funny O-linemen.
I think we work together better as a unit than one-offs.
All right, next one. This is an important one and probably going to hurt some guys' feelings. Which guy on the team would you not want to date your daughter?
All of them except for Hunter Henry.
That's a good choice.
No offense to Parker, but I would probably let Hunter, if he wasn't married already, date my daughter.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Let's see here. Who's the best dressed? I know it's not you for sure because
I think I'm the best dressed.
You have like dad, cowboy, Southern boy swag.
They had me like rate outfits a few years ago for the team.
Yep.
And some of the things guys wear, I'm just telling you.
Well, Jacoby, I had breakfast with Jacoby yesterday, and I just have to say, his outfit the other day.
I didn't see it.
Oh my God, I couldn't help. I love him, and I don't want to be mean to him, but that outfit was, and he was like, no, I felt good in it. He had like a baggy gray jacket.
See, that's the thing.
Baggy shorts and like shorts, like baggy shorts with patent leather loafers, and I was like, come on, dude.
This like stresses me out because like. We've gone from like everyone was in baggy stuff 15 years ago. I could be way off on the time frame.
You're right. It's every 30
to
years.
Like everything was tight. Everything was tight. And as a big guy, I'm like, why are they making XLs tight? To now, like everything's loose again. Loose. And I'm like, can we not make up our mind?
It's a circle.
Like, I don't know. I do think Hunter. To actually answer the question.
Okay.
Now, yeah. I don't dress like Hunter, but I think Hunter.
You know who I always liked?
He's got some good style.
To see what he was wearing when he came in, and I know he's on PUP right now. KB.
It was ridiculous.
I know, but it always made me like, all right, here comes KB. What's he wearing? Because
now we kill KB because he's got all the Born Blessed stuff, and like he'll be like wearing a hat like that he stitches like
Born Blessed
on the side. Like, no, this is Born Blessed, and no, it's not. It's a Red Sox hat, but like, I don't know the fashion stuff, man. I'm just not a fashion guy. I just like
what's your go-to? I mean, I'm not gonna lie. As I got older,
I like
what I wore
today.
To the game became less important.
Yeah,
I was like, I just want to be comfortable.
I wear what I wear to the game. Like I think I wore tennis shoes, shorts.
When's the last time you wore a suit to a game? When Bill was here?
When Bill made me.
Yeah.
But like
that was the nice thing about COVID year. It was like, all right, you can wear sweats.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, is like my wife gets so frustrated because she's like, you wear the same. I have like 13 white T-shirts, 13 black T-shirts. I have like 97 flannels.
Yep.
And
I love a flannel though, especially in New England. You got,
I don't know. I'm not a big fashion guy. I don't like to get super dressed up. And I like to wear.
But I've seen you clean up nice.
No, I like suits. I do like.
Yeah, you
but
do.
like I wear very traditional
suits.
I love putting on a good suit. I only wear cowboy boots with my suit, but I love suits. Shout out to Chris Cuazzo, makes really good suits. Guy in Boston, done them for me for a long time. I have a
cowboy boot question though, because because they're kind of boxy.
Like,
how do you get your? I've seen some things that like you wrap around the top of the boot. So
I don't do that.
You don't do that. You just get a little bit wider pants. So it goes
well, I mean, I just wear regular blue jeans.
With your suit?
Well, with my suit, I get my suits made to where like I don't get my. I tell my suit tell Chris like, yo, Chris, I wear
so it's
cowboy
custom.
boots.
It's not off the rack.
Dude, if I had an off the rack suit, they would be like
big and tall.
To fit on my chest. It's like dude. My buddy one year. This is a good suit story. My buddy one year, I was getting married. And he's like, hey, go to I don't know JCPenney, wherever it was. I picked out the suit. You guys have to buy it, and it wasn't bad because it was like a nice light blue, like something you could get some use out of. So I go to the store, and I'm looking at the rack, and I'm like, hey man, like there's only a 48, and he's like, well, what size do you need? So I text Chris, I'm like, yo, what suit am I? He's like 54 or something.
Yeah.
And was like, do you guys have 54? And the guy just stared at me. And he was like, no, we don't sell that. And I was like, yeah, but like you could.
Like so at a different store.
Yeah, like you could
in your
order
company.
that, right? You know, and he goes, no, that suit they don't make because it was like a slim.
So what'd you do?
Dude, I had to get a suit custom, like tried to
From
match
your guy.
it. Yeah, I tried to match it as much as I
You'd
could.
have been like Tommy Boy, fat.
And you know what's funny though?
in
The
a
guy that
little
did
suit.
this to me was one of my best friends growing up. He was an ex-offensive lineman that lost a bunch of weight, so he was.
You'll be there. You'll be there.
Yeah,
sometime.
but he was feeling good about himself, and I'm like, "Yo, Ian, they don't make the suit that big." And like I was like, "This is ridiculous." And
So you got an extra custom light blue suit?
Yeah, but I don't know. I like suits, but some of the fashion stuff I can't do.
All right, last one. Who's the best trash talker on the team?
Oh, Pep's up there, and
Love hearing him on Mic'd Up.
yeah, half the stuff what Pep says too is kind of like be more like this Jersey accent that I don't understand, and but Pep's definitely kind of the biggest trash talker.
All right. That's good. We'll keep doing that because I think that's fun. Bring out some more of these stories.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, no more fashion stories.
All right. Well, let's get it ready for our guests. Someone that you've been a teammate with for 9 years. Someone who I was a teammate with for a long time. Another guy who was undrafted, just like you and I, who's made a name for himself to become a leader on this team, Jonathan Jones. I know we talked about his big hit week 1 against the Bengals on that 4th down play, which was a huge key play in that victory. So we're excited to have him come on, another guest in live and in person.
Yeah. I think Jay Jones to me is like the ultimate professional, right? Like a guy, like if a young player was like came up to me and was like, Dave, like who should I like watch? Tell me like I'd be like, watch Jay Jones. Like he's a guy like,
kind of a defensive versions of James White when I think about it. Like a guy who can do it all.
Yeah, like
who's just tough, dependable.
He's quiet. He's a professional. Like he's, like I said, he does great work off the field. He's a great dad, husband. Like he's trying to do everything right. And you don't make it as far as he's made it being undrafted without doing that. Exactly, you know what I mean? 100%. Like, and it's not like he's obviously skill set, but like, he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's not the most like, he doesn't get off the bus and you're like, whoa, look at that. You know what I mean? Like, which I would say is, true for me, like, and you and like, it's just, it's a guy like for young guys and anyone like, all right, that's what a professional player does. That's how a professional player conducts himself. His preparation, all that. So, like I said, he's a guy I've really enjoyed getting to know and being a part of our football team and a local Georgia guy.
Georgia guy, but like you said,
Auburn.
Only problem.
My mom went to Auburn though.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, but she,
All right, well, let's bring Jay Jones on.
All right, perfect.
All right, here with Jay Jones, Jonathan Jones, Patriots defensive back on this Quick Snap podcast, obviously with David.
We have to change the name to Undrafted Podcast.
I know, I was thinking the same thing, 3 undrafted guys, which that to me, I knew it eventually when I came back to play here, but I remember coming and playing. I'm like, how did this guy not get drafted? He's fast, tough, smart. And David said the only bad thing about you is you went to Auburn. He said that a few weeks ago. So thanks for being here, but let's just talk about that, being an undrafted guy, something both of us went through. But then you go to the Super Bowl your rookie year, win a Super Bowl. What was that like?
Yeah, it was a journey. I mean, you play in the SEC, you play big-time ball, and obviously the goal for everybody is to get drafted. That doesn't happen. And I remember being on the phone after the draft. I'm talking to Arizona. Bruce Arians was at Arizona at the time, and then Coach Belichick. And he was just like, hey, if you come here, we'll give you an opportunity. I called Brandon King, who was a former teammate of mine who was already here. He was just like, that's true. You're going to get an opportunity. And so I took that and ran with it and came here, and kind of the rest was history. Like you said, go to the Super Bowl your first year, and it was amazing.
I mean, I feel like you said, kind of the same thing, my story. I felt, I had a other team or two, talking to you, but like my agent was like, because I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, I don't know about going to New England. That seems far away, And my agent was like, that's going to be the best spot. Like, you're going to get, because he had some connections, he was like, you're going to get a fair shake. Yeah. Like, it's no favorite this, favorite that, whatever. Draft, it didn't matter. Once we got here, we were all treated the same as rookies, which was not fun, but we were all treated the same. And you always got a shot. And, like you said, 3 guys kind of took advantage of those shots and made the most of them.
Yeah, it's similar for me too. I was undrafted, the same as you guys. You're on the phone. Your agent's like, "Hey, this team, this team, this team," and my agent goes, "I really think you should go to New England." I go, "You're crazy. They just drafted Kevin O'Connell the year before. Matt Gutierrez has been there forever, and Tom's the quarterback. Like, what, I'm going to be the fourth guy?" He goes, "I just had a feeling Nick Caserio really likes you." And sure enough, I came, and like you said, when you got here, it was the opportunity. It didn't matter where you came from, when you got there, whatever it was, and earn that opportunity. And, something for us, we all kind of keep that chip on our shoulder as we go through our career.
Was Nick still in the personnel side, or was he in the personnel side, or was he still
He was doing, that was back when Nick was doing a little bit of both. He'd come help with the receivers, but he was the one came and interviewed me at the East-West Shrine game, came and visited me at Michigan State. And so I felt pretty good about it, but I was like, I thought I was coming to be like the practice squad. And then, you got an opportunity, take advantage of it. Got another one, take advantage of it. And eventually I was the backup as an undrafted rookie, which was crazy. Now that I'm thinking of it, that's a pretty good Patriots rookie class. Yeah. You, Jacoby, Tooney, Ted Karras. I mean, anybody else that I'm missing?
Landon Roberts.
Yeah, E-Rob. I mean, that was a great class because, like, for me, I came back to New England. That was your second year. Yeah. And I remember thinking this must be like Jay Jones' third, fourth year because you were such a big part of that team. And but now looking at that rookie class, I mean, Jacoby's been playing back here, obviously. Tooney, one of the highest paid guards. Yeah. Karras, captain of Cincinnati. And that was your second year, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes it's a collaboration of the guys drafted early, but also the guys at the end that make a really good class.
Yeah, a lot of those guys were like the later round draft picks, the fifth, sixth round guys that we picked up in that class that was just football players,
Yeah.
Might not have showed out, at the combine or anything like that, but those were just a lot of good football players that brought in.
So obviously win the Super Bowl your rookie year, but then go to 3 Super Bowls in your first 3 years. I mean, you must have been thinking like, man, this is what it's supposed to be. Like, you made the right choice, and now 3 years in a row. Obviously, we lost to the Eagles that one year, but then get another chance. So you got 2 Super Bowl rings in the first 3 years of your career. Just talk about like what that does for your mentality, and obviously you being a huge part of those teams. Like now you're in your 9th year, you're a leader of the team. But learning from those guys that you were around early on, winning those Super Bowls, and just how it molded your career.
Oh, yeah. Everything becomes addictive, and at that point, I think around here, winning was addictive. Like, guys would do whatever it took, and everything was just focused on winning. And so to come into a culture that had that just winning, it rubbed off. You don't get that. You don't get that everywhere. Even being in college, you don't get to come into a place that values winning and would do whatever it took to win. So as a young player, being able to grow up and see what that looked like, a lot of mentors, a lot of guys who had done a lot of winning in the league. Like I said, when I got here, y'all had just come off the AFC Championship. And so it wasn't like there was a starting over or anything like that. It was already winning was in progress. And so you take that, you come into 9th year in the league and you're trying to reiterate, that to a lot of guys who are coming in, hadn't been a part of that winning in the last few years. And so that's kind of the role now, is to rub off on guys and show them, what that looks like and what that feels like.
And I think too, looking back, talking about that, like my first, now at year 10, I know it wasn't easy, but it seemed easy, like it seemed easy.
Oh man, another Super Bowl trip.
And yeah, and it just was one of those things like you thought was gonna. And that's so naive to say, but you just thought that was what you expected, and that's what you thought was going to happen every year. And we've talked about, it doesn't matter if you get to the Super Bowl and lose. Like, it's the same reality as not making the playoffs. Like, it's crash landing. Yeah. And I think now in my older years, just realizing, like, how hard that was. But I just didn't realize it when I was in it, how hard it was, how much it took, from you and from the team and organization, everything. Like, because like JJ said, it was just a complete buy-in, and that's what you have to be successful every year, and something you're striving for every year. And I think that's something we're going to try to do and keep working on. But I think a great story I always remember about Jay Jones is the first Super Bowl. We win. It was chaotic, right? And like I didn't know how to act, and just had a heck of a time. And we get on the bus like at 8 a.m. right to go home. It's like you're just like staggering around. I'm like waiting for Whataburger. I like ordered some biscuits and stuff, and like I'm like gotta get my biscuits before I get on this flight. And Jay Jones is on the bus with his daughter, and I was just like, wow, like that, like. that is so cool. It was really cool. I wasn't a parent yet or anything, even thinking about it.
Yep.
And just see that and just see him be a dad, is something that whatever play he makes on, like, I don't know, it'll always stick with me. And it's something I've always enjoyed, watching you do and getting to know you over the past 9 years, whatever it is. And just seeing all the stuff you do, besides football, but also trying to be the ultimate professional. So, that's something I think it was kind of funny because I was like, man, this guy's being a dad and I'm up here
just hungover.
Yeah, hungover, like trying to eat biscuits. And
I mean, I was hungover dad.
I know.
David was just talking about this past weekend. He was a hungover dad.
I couldn't even.
I think that was what it was for me. I wanted her to have the pictures, to be around it.
She probably don't remember it.
She doesn't remember it.
I said it to her after a game this year, or whatever, some family thing we had. I was like, you don't remember this? And I told her, and I'm sure she was like, who is this guy? Like, what is he talking about? But, I think that was so cool. And one day she'll cherish, those memories and stuff. So I always thought that was so cool. It's something I always stick with.
All right, so we talked about the good years, the beginning years, but the three of us all together went through some tough years too. But now in transition, just talk about Gerard was a defensive coach, so you were around him a lot. David and I played with him. Yeah. And then we're around him as a coach, and now as a head coach, to see him make that transition and for you to be one of those veteran leaders he's counting on. Just talk about, his role changing, your role changing, being, another basically coach on the field out there, because you've been in the system. I know everybody puts their own spin on it, but you've been around for 9 years basically playing. And the one thing that makes you so special is, and I had to learn this last year playing against you in a real game, is you move around all over the place. And that just shows to your credit, you basically being able to play outside, inside, even a little bit of safety if they ask you to do it. And so now a year in transition and your leadership role over there.
Yeah, just first off with Gerard, he's been consistent. And, a lot of people, it's hard to say that about, but he's just been consistent since I met him. The same person. He's the same person every day. Yeah. When we came in from the win, he was the same way when he came in from the loss. And, as a leader, you value those things and you notice those things. And the guys that are under him, like I said, the captains, the David, it's our job to kind of reiterate his message. And I think it's easier when you've played with a guy and he coached me, to reiterate his message, because I know what he stands for. I know what the principles, and I know the man that he is. And so it's easy for me to go back and to reiterate that to the guys of like, hey, this is what he wants. There's good behind it, and let's just get out there and do it.
Yeah. Well, when you say, like, we've talked about it, and I said he's always genuine. Yeah. And I think that goes hand in hand with consistent, right? Like, and I think, as grown men, you can see through the rah-rah, and you can see through the whatever, like, but coming in, no matter, like you said, every day, consistent, just, is who he is not going to change for anybody. I think that as a leader, as a grown man, like, you appreciate that because, it's too hard. The seasons, there's too many ups and downs, and there's too many.
Got to stay consistent.
Yeah, like, there's too many. You let those emotions start going all over the place. That's not good for anybody in leadership. Like, you want to try to be consistent. You want to try to focus on the main things, right? Like, we talked about that this week. Like, focus on these things, live and die by these, and that's what you want to try to do. And I think, he's done a really good job of trying to do that so far.
I mean, it takes someone special to replace the man.
Yeah.
You talk about that. You always want to be the man who replaces the man, but he didn't have that opportunity. He is that guy. Yeah. He's next up. And so how he's handled it, how he's going about that, you've seen as a quarterback having to replace a guy like Tom, having to replace a legendary coach like Coach Belichick. There's not a lot of coaches out there who could, fill those shoes and just keep everything running. And I think, so far Gerard has done that, and they're the best you can ask anybody.
I've always thought, whoever was going to be the coach after Bill, that's a tall order, right? Yeah. But I've always thought in my mind, and this is before I even knew if that was Gerard's aspiration to be a head coach, but I looked at Gerard when he got back into coaching, because he was away from football for a few years, right? And when he got back into coaching, I looked at him and I said, that's a guy who, first of all, he played at a really high level. We had Matt Light on, and he talked about Gerard was a coach before he was ever a coach, because he was a coach while he was playing. And he played, and we talked about it after week 1 when you guys won that game, and we talked about your tackle, like that huge tackle on 4th down. And I said, that team is playing like Gerard Mayo on offense, on defense, on special teams, all of those things. And that was an identity that you're looking to create, right? And I always thought it wasn't going to be easy for anybody, but Gerard had played for Bill. He coached under Bill, so he knows the schematics. He knows the situational football, all of that stuff. The meetings that we would sit in with hours for Bill, he was in those meetings as a player and a coach. And now he's taking his own spin and his own persona and his personality and putting it into the team. And that's who, I see your team being a tough nose, run the ball, stop the run. And I know, last Thursday night didn't go the way you wanted to, but sometimes you have to go through those things to figure out how to make the corrections. What's our plan for next week? And, for me, I felt really happy for Gerard to get that opportunity. And I think in time, as you build those foundational pieces, the team will show who he is.
Yeah, for sure. I think he'll always give guys the opportunity, just that same, how we talk about undrafted guys, he's going to carry that over. So, I think New England will forever be that place where, hey, if you want an opportunity and you think you're better than the guys in front of you, show up and
do it.
And do it.
For
Improve
sure.
it.
And you got to do it. That's right.
Yeah.
And so, we kind of talked on a little bit before about you having to be Swiss Army knife, play all over the place, but predominantly the star, the nickel DB. Talk about just that position, because so much is made about these outside guys, but the inside guys to me actually have a harder job, because you're going against a variety of different types of receivers. You're having to move left to right. Not many corners, unless you're playing true man and you're matching up with someone, you're moving the whole game, right? So, but if you're a nickel slot DB, you're going left to right all over the place. And just talk about, and also you're playing outside sometimes too. Talk about and educate people on the nuances of playing that position, because it is so, everyone wants to talk about Sauce and everyone wants to talk about Jalen and all those guys, but to me, when I'm going into a game plan, if a team had a really good nickel, I'm like, God, that just makes it hard, because it's easier to throw the ball in the field, in the middle of the field, as opposed to outside. And so, you're one of the best ones in the game, and your mentality that, kind of led you to that.
Yeah, it's different. And like you said, the media doesn't give the nickel position the credit it deserves, but it's playing on outside and inside. It's way harder to play on the inside. Every route's basically a two-way go option route.
Right.
There's no sideline over there to help you out, to nudge a guy to the sideline. It's hard. And just knowing, like I said, you're an indicator for the quarterback. As a quarterback, where you line up at star, whether you're inside leverage, outside leverage, you're trying to disguise where you're at to mess with the quarterback, because, at corner, it doesn't really matter as much, as it does, on the inside. And so it really is. It's a valuable position. Obviously, outside, you get the one-on-ones. That's why you can split a guy out X and say, hey, there's a one-on-one matchup. But as a quarterback, you don't want to live and die by those matchups. Right. And so, like you said, the higher percentage throws are on the inside, and that's where the nickel lives, and that's a hard job.
I think there was a shift, right? Because, let's take it back to Wes Welker, who's kind of like the first big productive slot receiver. Yeah. Well, teams are like, well, now if teams are gonna use these slot receivers, we gotta get a better guy to cover the slot receiver. So that kind of jump started that position, because even when I came in the league, there wasn't a lot of, nickel defense was reserved for third downs. Yeah. It was base defense and first and second down, and then it was like, okay, they're going to pass. Let's put in nickel.
I remember, too, if you ever got teams based with Julian.
Oh, yeah.
And linebacker on Julian.
Oh, it was over.
That matchup was over.
100%.
Tom was hitting his back foot and throwing it to Julian.
Yes.
So it is very interesting, and you've seen a shift in the league where, you might go into a week and, they don't play base. Mm-hmm. And that nickel.
A lot of teams are getting away from it, which is why you saw, so now that I'm doing this media stuff, I got to track everything. There's 7 teams that have run the ball more than they've thrown it this year, which is now I got to learn all these statistics, but that's unheard of. Yeah. And I think you see this circular motion in the NFL. It's okay, teams are passing more. Now we got to get lighter on defense. And then the offenses are well, hold on. If they're going to be lighter on defense, let's just run the ball. And which is another part of your game. We talked about the coverage, but you're essentially a linebacker. Yeah. That's the crazy thing. You have to run support. You have to be in the run game, and you're covering these guys, which to me, trust me, I love the Steph Gilmores. We love Steph. But when you're out there, it's let's just play the pass game, right? I remember being in those meetings with Tom and Josh, and we would be playing one of these premier DBs that played a lot of man, and they're like, let's put them inside. So if they're tracking, a lot of times like they would put Jalen Ramsey on Rob, and we're like, okay, well now we've got to cover 52 yards of the field, as opposed to, like you said, when you're outside, you got the sideline there, and so a lot of in-breaking routes. And I think for you, that's something you have to go up against every week, and on top of it, be able to stop the run.
Yeah. And even now, it's like the flex tight end.
Yep.
Like if you can get a good tight end that has receiver capabilities, but can also be physical, that's another guy that you can bring in, kind of like a nickel. It's like, okay, you can't just bring a speed guy in there because he's too big for that.
Right.
And then you can't put a linebacker on him because they can't cover him. So that's been that matchup. Like you said, it's coming full circle where when you can find a guy who's physical and fast, I mean, those are the guys you can kind of cherish because there are not a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, football's just a circle.
It is. It really is.
Like, I wouldn't be 10 years. We'll be running the wing T again. Like it's a circle. But like you said, I think a lot of it does have to.
You just got to be ahead of if you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like I think the one thing I realize is the teams that are always staying consistently winning, they're taking what they do and they're adding wrinkles before other teams can realize what they're doing. Like when you look at the Shanahan and the 49ers. When I played for him in 2017, it was true traditional West Coast. And now when you watch them, it's a lot of pistol, it's a lot of turbo motion. And so he's always evolving, but it's the same plays, right? Yeah. He's just figuring out different ways to dress them up. He's adding some few wrinkles. And if you can be on top of the game and keep adjusting, same with the Chiefs, they do it all the time. Yeah. And same now with defense is the same thing. If you can be, a top 5 defense and you're adding different things to it, like everyone used to talk about Seattle 3. Yeah. No one even runs that shit anymore. It's because once people figured it out, they knew how to pick it apart.
We always say, right, it's a copycat league.
Right, exactly.
Like everyone,
100%.
You see a team like, if our defense runs something really good, like another team's going to see it and be like, maybe we should try, like, or vice versa. Like it's a copycat league, and it's constantly, like you said, like who can do it best. And that's what we talked about, like changing offenses or whatever. Like no one's reinventing the wheel. No. It's all just terminology, different things like that, and it's all just, all right, look, we do this, make it look like this, dress it up differently. Like it's so schematic and it works. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, like it's not that revolutionary. Anything.
Yeah, Seattle 3 they were basically saying, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to be the best at doing this one thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's going to know exactly when, where, and why. When we look at our defense, it's every defense. Yep. We don't have a coverage out there that we don't run.
Yep.
And that's why you said every coordinator, it looks different because you get to come in, you get to pick from what we run, and you get to make it look like how you want it. But we have every defense that you could possibly run.
Well, I always told people, I win against you guys 300 times a year, scout team, training camp, all that stuff. And I always appreciated it because it was so interchangeable. Yeah. But when it's scout team, like I'm not really concerned. And then last year, all of a sudden, I have to go in the game, and I'm like, oh my God, like what's the front? Now Peppers is at linebacker, Jay Jones is at safety, and to me, that always keeps the quarterback guessing. I think that's a big part of the scheme is never make anything look like what it is. Disguise. You talked about disguise before, and that position a lot of times if it's a split safety coverage. The star's inside. If it's because he's going to have to play that hook area, and then all of a sudden, if he's outside, then you're thinking. But then I'm looking at you, and then all of a sudden it changes on the snap. And so I think the one thing that you guys have is you have a lot of people that work together, and you communicate really well. And I saw it a few weeks ago. I think I don't know if it was Peppers or Duggar was down, like looking he was going to blitz, and then they check out, and then they went back to a cover 2, but he just played the flat. And it's like when you can have that continuity and that communication, that makes it hard on the opposing quarterback. And so I think you're a huge part to that because you're so multiple in what you can do.
Yeah, and there's only a few quarterbacks. I mean, look at last week. I mean, that's the quarterbacks of all quarterbacks. Where I'm sitting up there at the line, he's looking at me, and there's one play I came on the corner blitz and he laughed. He was like, "I knew 10 seconds ago you were coming." I was like, "I knew you knew."
Yeah.
So it's certain things you're trying to give a quarterback like that the last second.
Yeah.
Some of these younger quarterbacks, you can line up in it, make a little adjustment, and they still won't know it until about the third quarter. But a guy like that, I mean, he's seen everything on repeat for so many times. Yeah. It's hard to disguise.
Ingrained in him.
Yeah. Well, you remember the Chicago game we played. was that 2018?
There.
It was Trubisky. He kind of ran. He couldn't throw the ball, but he ran all over
around.
the place.
Yeah.
And I was really good friends with their quarterback coach. He went to my high school, and he came up after the game. He goes, "We just stopped looking at the pictures because we had no idea what it was." You know what I mean? Like that's the type of defense we're talking about. And yeah, he was able to scramble around and make some plays, but they couldn't throw the ball all day. And you guys do such a good job with that. Let's just talk about. You mentioned last Thursday night you're going against Aaron. It seemed like it was a lot of zone. He's getting the ball out quick. That's got to be frustrating. But what do you learn from that to now go against the 49ers, who they like to attack that zone defense? Is it something that you take and say, okay, we learned from this, and what going forward, we got to change some of these things?
Oh, yeah. And looking at just even the difference in the quarterbacks, people will say Aaron Rodgers, is older, but he's athletic. He's still mobile. Yep. And so a lot of those are extended plays. Yep. And so San Fran's a lot more timing. Like you said, you guys need to be where they need to be.
Hit him at the line of scrimmage. I remember Bill always saying, you got to hit these guys at the line of scrimmage.
You have to. You got to get them off their timing, because if not, the ball is going to be where it's supposed to be, when it's supposed to be there, and you're going to have a long day because everything's predicated off of timing. So with San Fran, that's going to be a big thing, is being able to get guys off, get them off the spot, the receiver, and get some pressure on the quarterback and get them off timing.
Yeah, and then just talk about West Coast trip. We were talking, Gerard told the reporters today, you guys are leaving on Friday. Just for the fans, that mentality, okay, we're going out there for a business trip. We're going to go maybe try to get adjusted. To me, I always just try to stay in my own time zone. Yeah. I mean, some guys do it differently. Some guys try to go, east to west or west to east and adapt. But, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. It's always tough. I think the late games get a little bit tougher. Yeah. When you get a West Coast morning game, it's not as bad because you're kind of up in our – we're practicing earlier. It's a game day. So that kind of makes it a little bit easier. But it is tough to, get out of your element, go all the way on the West Coast, a long flight, you're sitting down, it kind of throws off your routine. So just, trying to stay as consistent in your routine for me is something that I've always found was better than trying to adjust and go, West Coast time.
I do enjoy, the fact, I enjoy when we go, I know we're not going for a week, but when we do have, a West Coast trip, you miss your family and all that, but I do enjoy, there's just something about being together, because we don't get it. You got kids, you got things you're doing. Same with me, same with everyone else. Yep. It's all right, how much football stuff can I do? And then how can I get home and try to be a dad for an hour a day? It feels like some days, and be a husband, whatever. And, I do enjoy those Saturdays. You're hanging out with each other in the rooms, watching college football. Football goes on at 10 a.m. out there, so there's something I do.
Good bonding.
I do enjoy the trips when we leave, because Saturdays is so quick. You get there at 5, everyone's just trying to get rest.
And all the teams, you look back on those trips, you look back on the times where we stay out on the West Coast for a week. I remember we went out, it was at Mexico City when we went out there. And we stayed out for the week.
That was
Colorado Springs.
That was a bad trip.
David almost died that week.
That was a bad trip.
For the rest of us, we had a good trip.
But it is fun, right?
You build that camaraderie with your team and just being away from everybody.
Because you don't feel guilty. If you're home and some of the boys are like, hey, we're going to go out to dinner, but you got a family. You're like, man, I haven't seen my kid at all. Am I really going to go do this? But out there, you don't have that option. So it's man, this is – I hate to say it, but it's kind of like college a little bit. You know what I mean?
No, it is.
There's no other option. So it's I want to hang out with my guys, and I don't feel conflicted. And so sometimes some of those trips really bond a team together. The one thing that I'll always say, looking back on my career, the closest teams that I was on were always those New England teams, especially your early years, those 17, 18, 19. Those teams were, I'd sit down and have lunch with you. I'd sit down and have lunch with DA. I'd sit down and have lunch with Detroit. Those teams, everybody was friends with everybody, and that was something that I rarely ever, I never witnessed anywhere else.
Yeah, I think for me, looking back on it, there were a lot of older guys on those teams. There were a lot of veteran guys, and so as a young guy to come in and oh my God, that's Smartellus Bennett. That's these are guys who've been in the years, 8, 9 years at this point. So you did get that. You got a lot of that camaraderie from that older group and older group of guys that was a lot different.
Yeah. Before you get out of here, let's talk a little bit just about your foundation, things you do with that, because I think it's really great, and maybe a little bit about you being a pilot and how that came about.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I think that's, when I saw you on that flying that plane, I felt nervous.
I wish you still lived
it looked
in
like
Atlanta
you knew what
so
you were
take
doing.
Me home, but But yeah, just talk a little bit about your foundation. You know, I know they do a lot of great work. You know, we're from similar areas in Georgia, and just things you do with that.
Yeah, Next Step Foundation. We get to do a lot with the youth. I always say I'm a product of help. You know, I got to where I am because someone helped me. They either gave their money or their time. You know, and I've been fortunate enough to make it to where we've made it to, and I have, a little bit of both, a little bit of time and money to give back. And so I've, gone headfirst into volunteering and helping, different kids take their next step. I didn't have one specific initiative that I wanted to mark because everyone's in different places. And so that's why I came up with the name, Next Step, to help kids, at whatever walk of life they're in, to help them. But I do, speaking about Pilot, I love education. I love learning. I love, technology. I wanted to be an engineer major, in college. And so, getting into the league, kind of establishing myself, having more time in the off season to kind of devote to things outside of football. Like you said, the first few years here was Super Bowl. You got 4 or 5 weeks at home, and then you're right back you're right back into OTAs. And so, getting older, having things that piqued my interest outside of football in the off season. That's where the aviation came about, and now I'm kind of tying that with the foundation and getting kids into aviation.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I remember the last few years when you were going through it, right? He'd be like walking around the facility. The playbook would be this big, and he'd be walking around with the aviation.
Flying a plane is a little more dangerous than playing football.
This dude, I was like, dude, I might look into be a pilot. That's kind of cool. And then I looked at the things he was doing, like highlighting. He had all these Post-it notes through it. I was like, I don't like school. There ain't no way I'm doing that. Like, it was really impressive, and I think it's super cool. It's something not a lot of guys do, and I think it's just he's kind of like James Bond out here. You know what I mean?
Try to be
riding boats and
everything.
Yeah, jets and planes. And,
it's pretty cool.
So
people always ask like, "What's your favorite thing to do?" And I'm like, honestly, anything I've never done before. If you're like, "Hey, let's go do this," and I've never done it, I'm like, "All right, like I'll go do it. I'll go do it."
That's awesome.
Well, thanks for coming, man. One of my favorite teammates, the Patriots. I mean, lucky to have you be a leader on that team, 9th year. I mean, if someone would have told you you'd be playing in the same, you played for the same team for 9 years.
Yeah.
I had to go all around. You and David have been here the whole time, but being undrafted guys to establish yourself now as leaders on the team, that's hats off to you guys, and I appreciate you both. And thanks for being here. Good luck this week.
Appreciate it, Jay. Go Dogs.
Thank you for having me.
All right, back with another edition of our NFL Around the League Quick Snaps here with producer Danny. Some interesting topics for sure this week.
Yeah, it was an interesting week of football, week 3 in the NFL. I feel like it's correction week for a lot of the NFL teams, but it was a day of the underdog on Sunday. So we had 7 underdogs win. I'll list them off here. We had the Giants, Packers, Eagles, Vikings, Broncos, Panthers, Rams. They all won. And right now, 3-0. If you told me they're 3-0 before the season, I would have said no way. Vikings 3-0, Steelers 3-0 with Justin Fields.
Yep.
Seahawks, good football team, 3-0. They beat the Pats. And then the Chiefs, obviously, which we all would have assumed. Bills play tonight on Monday Night Football.
Yep.
We're recording after practice on Monday here. But, yeah, kind of crazy. So, I mean, let's start with just, like, who's the biggest surprise right now for you? 3-0, the Vikings, the Seahawks,
I think the Vikings
Steelers.
are, just because they drafted J.J. McCarthy. I think everyone assumed that he was going to be a rookie quarterback starting. Thankfully they had signed Sam Darnold to be a veteran presence, and now he's totally resurrected his career. And I think I look at those guys, very talented on offense, really, really well coached, not only offensively, head coach, but the defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, someone we all know and are very familiar with here, his defenses have always been great. They pick up a Stephon Gilmore to pair with a Harrison Phillips, a Harrison Smith, some of these other guys. And I know it's early, but I don't think anyone would have guessed that, especially because of Sam Darnold's track record. But I think let's look back to last year where Sam Darnold was. He was in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. And sometimes as a young quarterback, it's all about being in the situation. And I think I know I learned a lot playing for Kyle. And clearly Sam went there and had a year where he could the pressure was off, sit back. Maybe we talked to Jacoby earlier in the year, like kind of relearn that love of football. And here's an opportunity. He gets to throw to Justin Jefferson, Addison, these guys, and on a good team, and they're 3-0. And so I think that's a surprise. I think another one is Justin Fields, wasn't even going to be the starter. Russell Wilson gets hurt, is thrust in that position. And I just heard on the way down here, first time he's won 3 games in a row his entire career.
Crazy.
And, it's just, you go to a good team. The Steelers have been a good team since I was a rookie in the league. I mean, talk about continuity. They've had 3 coaches in like 70 years or something crazy like that. So Mike Tomlin, great coach, great organization, put him in that situation and just say, listen, you don't have to be a superstar. Go out there. The team's built around you and execute. And so for both of those guys, that change of scenery is really, really paying off.
I have a question on the Steelers for you. So when Russell Wilson comes back and he's healthy, good to go, say Justin Fields, he's 4-0 after next week. Like, you stick with the hot hand,
of course,
there, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, for the team, I think they would say, well, hold on a second. These guys battled all the way through training camp. You didn't even name Russ the starter until the very end. And then, unfortunately, due to injury, Fields is in there and he's doing well. And so I think until he maybe struggles, which maybe that's going back to what he was in Chicago, I think you stay with him for as long as you can. And in all reality, I think if you're the Steelers, that's the optimal outcome, because if he becomes your quarterback, he's young. He can be the quarterback of the future. Whereas if Russell's your quarterback, and I know quarterbacks can play a long time, but is that 2-3 years? Whereas if you can take Justin Fields, a former really high draft pick, talented guy, and kind of build him back up to what people thought he could be, now you might have a quarterback for the next 10 years.
Yep. And you mentioned the Vikings. Sam Darnold, he looks awesome. I think he leads the NFL in touchdowns right now.
Yep.
I think that's an ode to Kevin O'Connell as a head coach.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell, he was a quarterback here when I came in as a rookie. So teammates, and then, ventured off to play a few more years, but kind of started his coaching journey early.
How many NFL years did he play? Like a couple?
Like 4 maybe, 4 or 5. I think after he left here, he actually went to the Jets. But then, you get into that coaching young. You're a former quarterback. I think that's a huge thing, especially for a guy like Sam Darnold. Your head coach is a guy who played the position at this level. And I think Kevin learned from a lot of great coaches, and he's super positive. I saw him, giving the game balls out and just how the team has rallied around Sam is pretty cool to watch, especially being a guy who had been a bunch of different places. I mean, Sam was written off in New York, Carolina. I mean, we talked about his stop in San Francisco, which sometimes you need that, just a pause, a reset, and then to go from there to the Vikings, probably not thinking you're going to be the starter because they drafted J.J. McCarthy. But now you get this opportunity, and it's like getting the keys to a Ferrari, man. I mean, they're rolling. He's playing really well. And so, yeah, it's 3 weeks in, but just continue to, try to get better, stay this. I mean, even if they stay the same, don't take any steps backward. And sure enough, I mean, we talk about underdogs winning. The NFL is a tough league, and anybody can win on any given Sunday, and that's the reality. But I think so much is about momentum and belief. We talked about that with the Patriots after week 1, and they had a rough loss in overtime, but they battled, and obviously a quick turnaround of the Jets, and it was a blowout loss. But so much of that is as long as you continue to build, and also you talk about that, you have to stay healthy, which another team that beat the 49ers this week, the Rams, they were hurting. They were going to start 0-3. They lost their starting center, their guard, 2 starting receivers. But you know what? Everybody counted them out against a team that was a few plays away from winning the Super Bowl. And Matt Stafford, another veteran guy who knows how to play the game, comes up with some big plays. And seeing the clip of Sean McVay hugging him after the game, man, he's like, "You're such a effing stud." Yeah. And that type of coaching can go a long way. I mean, the guys appreciate that, and then we'll play that much harder for those guys.
Yeah, and you said any given Sunday. So speaking of that theme, and another underdog here that won this week in week 3, Carolina Panthers. And super unique quarterback drama going on in Carolina. You had Bryce Young benched after 2 games, obviously number 1 overall pick last year. The Bears traded that away and got, Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, and a ton of other picks in return. People are saying worst trade in NFL history. Who knows? Can't write that off yet. But Bryce Young gets benched. Andy Dalton's thrusted into quarterback. He is the first quarterback in 2024 to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Yeah. So talk to me just about that situation. I feel like Andy Dalton kind of rejuvenated that locker room a little bit.
Yeah, I think Andy Dalton is a very, very good professional quarterback. And so there are certain things that maybe a young guy like Bryce, who that organization has totally failed him. I mean, you drafted number 1 overall. You have no plan to build around him. He's had 3 head coaches in the first 18 months of his professional career with no support. And he gets thrown out there, and you can just see, similar to like what Mac went through here, just no belief, no trust. And Andy Dalton, on the other hand, I'm sure he's sitting there as a veteran saying, well, maybe if we did this, if I'm out there, I make that not in a bad way to Bryce, but he's been there. He's seen it. He's been on good teams. He's been on bad teams. He knows how to play the position. And so you go out there with a veteran presence of just knowing how to play the position at this level, which is totally different. We look at the rookie quarterback struggling this year. It's a different animal. It really is. And so you talk about any given Sunday. If someone had told me that the Panthers are going to blow out the Raiders, look, I was there last year. I mean, their defense has been solid for the last 2 years. With the talent that they have there, and they couldn't stop them. They literally, I mean, Andy played a tremendous game, and I talked about this on my Sirius XM radio show last week. I don't see Bryce Young has to go somewhere else. I mean, right now they might as well trade him for whatever they can get, maybe to a Miami Dolphins or wherever it might be, because he needs a fresh start because that organization has just truly failed them.
I think Miami would be perfect.
Yeah,
with
why
Mike
not?
McDaniel. Yeah, obviously Tua down right now, and that's a great offensive system.
Skylar Thompson too. I mean, they are
exactly.
hurting, and
Tim
so
Boyle
it's probably not his best case scenario to go somewhere and have to play right away. Because the one thing about quarterback is, other positions you can kind of catch on quick, but quarterback, to go in there and call plays, if it's different terminology, he might have to go there and sit a few weeks. But I don't see how you can go back to him at this point. I mean, you failed him with the people around him, then you bench him after the second week of the season. What that does to a kid's psyche, he doesn't deserve that, and they should have had a better plan in place when they drafted him. And sometimes it just goes to show, look, I played a lot of different places in my career, and there's a lot of organizations you'd be shocked with the lack of competency and people who are making decisions all the way up to ownership. And so I think that's what you're seeing down in Carolina. Now, they were saved by Andy Dalton coming in and being a competent veteran quarterback. I don't think that solves the issues around them and the team that they are. I think they have a long way to go, and that was a feel-good story, and you're happy for Andy. But, for me, I saw that with Bryce Young, and it's just that's the part of this business that makes you hate it, because he didn't deserve that. You drafted him with the number one pick. You're supposed to do everything you can to build the team around him. And I didn't see any of that. They fired the coach after 1 year. He's got to learn a new offense, a new head coach, and then you give him 2 weeks. That's all you give him. I mean, clearly he has to reset himself, because the fact that Andy was able to come in and do that just shows me that, they're not terrible, but a competent quarterback can make up for things that maybe a rookie who, one, doesn't know yet, and two, doesn't have any trust or belief in the organization or even in himself anymore.
Yeah, I hope it works out for Bryce. I feel bad for him. Hope he lands in a different spot. But I wanted your quick reaction, because obviously you mentioned you were in the locker room last year with not Oakland, the Las Vegas Raiders. And Antonio Pierce, head coach, made those comments after the game that he saw players making business decisions, and that the coaches and front office are going to make some business decisions themselves. So, yeah, just give me a little inside look into that Raiders locker room.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, right? I mean, third week in and making business decisions. I'm not really, I watched kind of all the games, so there's not like one play that I was like, oh, someone turned down a tackle, someone didn't block someone. So it'll be interesting to see what comes from that and how those players respond, because those are pretty harsh words, 3 weeks in your season. And, to see how they respond from that, and let's see what business decisions they make. Are they going to come out with a new starting lineup next week, or are people going to be benched? So, using the media to send a message to your players can go either way. I think sometimes they say, well, just come and say it to us right to our face, wait till the next day and have that hard meeting. But to go in there after the game, you better follow through on what you're, I guess it's a threat when you look at it that way. If you're going to make business decisions, then all of a sudden you go back out there the next week and everything's the same, then what are those business decisions that you're talking about? So it'll be interesting to see, how they respond and what he's referencing to, because I think if he follows through with that, the next time they take the field, maybe there's some different people out there playing.
Definitely. Interesting. Very interesting. All right, wrapping up here, but another young quarterback that we've talked about on the show a couple times and we've been following, Caleb Williams in Chicago. So they lost. They're 1-2, but he looked better. He had 362 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I have a trivia question for you.
Okay.
This is the first time a Bears quarterback has thrown for that many yards since 2016. Who was the quarterback in Chicago?
Me.
Brian Hoyer was.
Yeah,
That's right.
I know.
They've been searching for their Hoyer since 2016.
If Clay Matthews hadn't shattered my forearm, maybe who knows what would have happened. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's early. It's 3 games, right? But are you a Caleb Williams believer?
Look, I think, like I said, same thing with Bryce. Playing quarterback at this level is a whole different animal, and there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just what everybody sees on Sundays. It's the preparation, it's the meetings, it's the, taking charge of the huddle, all of those things. And so to see progression is always good. But like I said, watching some of the games, some of the throws that he's making, I'm like, man, he better learn from that quick, because there was a lot of throws that could have been interceptions that they didn't intercept. But he makes a lot of great throws too. And so I think the thing as a young player, or even like a organization and change or whatever it might be, is know that there are going to be mistakes, know that there's going to be plays that you wish you can do better. And the biggest thing is correct them as fast as you can and then try not to repeat them. I think that's the biggest thing. And the hard thing with the style of his play is you don't want to take away the athleticism, the aggression, all of those things. But I think, like we even talked about with Josh Allen, who I think is, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, sometimes that gets you into trouble too. And so that's some of those things I see with Caleb is, that those things that you try to make a play that you really shouldn't ends up being a bad play. And I think there's got to be it's a very fine line, the balance to have in that, I wasn't athletic enough to play that way, so I wouldn't know what that's like. But I think you see guys like even Mahomes, he had a stretch where, trying to scramble around, make these incredible throws, sometimes ends up hurting you more than it helps. Yeah. Now, when they make them, it's incredible, and everybody wants to, throw it on the highlight reel. Mm-hmm. But I think even Pat has realized, when you watch Patrick play, he has kind of refined his game a little bit more. When everybody drops back, he takes this underneath stuff, and that's why Rashee Rice has been huge for him, because he's kind of this catch and run guy. And so I think those guys can learn a lot from Pat, because early on it was all the razzle dazzle, drop back 18 yards, throw it 60 yards. If you really watch Patrick play now, as opposed to even 3 years ago, he's developed more to be this pocket passer, take what the defense gives him, and eventually, the defense has to come up and take the short stuff, and then he throws it deep to Xavier Worthy or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think it's another one of those situations in Chicago where I don't know if the coaching staff is necessarily set up to help Caleb Williams grow in year one. So he's kind of scrambling, running all over the place. That offensive line's not great, but should be, time will tell to see if that pick ends up to be.
Yeah, I think offensive line play overall in the NFL, you see a lot of teams are dealing with the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Bears. Yeah. A lot of teams are dealing with this, and I think one thing, and Tom talks about this all the time. Tom Brady always says, like, the quality of play is going down, and I think fans don't always notice it, because someone's always going to win and someone's always going to lose. And so if your team wins, even if the quality of play isn't what it used to be, you don't really notice it until it turns around and you're, the New Orleans Saints, and you blow both teams out, and then all of a sudden you can't do anything in week 3 and you lose to the Eagles. And I think that has to do with, I went to the BC Michigan State game past week. Incredible game. I was soaked. It was Billy O, who's my coach, and then my alma mater. So I was a little torn.
Oh, that's right.
But incredible atmosphere, and the one thing that I noticed was BC had this more physical running game, and that's kind of Bill's style and the way. I was at one of their spring practices. I mean, he was after these guys all day. And I think, when you watch college football, I'm looking at scores 70-55. I'm like, where's the defense? But it's college football has become so spread out, so simplified, screens here, all these things. Yeah. And I think now when guys get to the NFL, these coaches, they got to get these guys ready to play fast, and they also know I only have a short window before I get fired. And so instead of going the hard way, I talked to Dante Scarnecchio about this at Matt Light's shootout last week. Instead of trying to build a foundation and work it a hard way and let these guys learn the right way and know that they're going to mess up, it's like, well, just throw them out there and hope that it works out. And I think you're seeing that with the way that not just offensive line play, but play in general. And there's always going to be the superstars. There's always going to be amazing plays. But the overall quality of the entire league, when you watch, it's like, man, there's a lot of bad football. And I always used to give Tom a hard time for him saying that. But now maybe I'm removed. I'm watching it at home. There is a lot of, and look, I didn't play perfectly, far from it. Right. But just like fundamentals, and Bill used to harp on that all the time, just like the fundamentals of playing the game, and you see a lot of stuff now where it's kind of just helter-skelter, and just you got to put somebody out there and someone's going to win the game, and I see a lot of that now.
Yeah, so wrapping up the NFL Quick Snap section here in week 3, way too early Super Bowl prediction. I want to hear your NFC Championship game, your AFC Championship game. I'll give mine. I won't give too much analysis, but I want to hear yours.
All right. NFC Championship game. I'm going to go with, I think the 49ers will get it figured out. I think hopefully McCaffrey will get back. Obviously, Debo returns. Kyle's too good of a coach versus the Vikings.
Okay.
And then AFC Championship game, I'm going to go with the Bills and the Chiefs.
Okay.
And then Super Bowl, and like you said, this is 3 weeks in. The Bills haven't even played their third game.
Right.
I'm going to go upsets in both.
Okay. You have the
Bills, Vikings.
You have the Vikings in the Super Bowl.
I mean, look, this is obviously.
Yeah.
I didn't. You're throwing this at me. I haven't put a lot of thought, but
Sure.
I think I really like what I see from those guys, and it seems like seeing some of the locker room stuff, they believe in what's happening now. Sam has to continue to play the way he's been playing, and I think they'll have a chance because I look at also on the other side of the ball, and Flores has that defense really playing well. I mean, you beat the 49ers
and the Texans.
Which, C.J. Stroud has been on a tear.
Stuff.
And so 2 games that probably no one guessed
Right.
that they could win, and won them pretty handily.
Yep, 100%.
And so I think, that's like my surprise, way too early pick. And then I look at the Bills, and Josh Allen's playing great. They're running the ball a lot more, which takes a little bit off of his plate. He doesn't have to make these superstar plays. And you look at the job that Sean McDermott's done with that defense. Basically lost 3 of their starting 4 secondary guys. Poyer's down in Miami now. Hyde's gone. Tre'Davious White's gone. And they go out there and limit the Dolphins. I mean, Tyreek and Waddle couldn't do anything against them. Their pass rush is a lot better than what it used to be, and they're missing Matt Milano. And so you look at the coaching job he's doing, and I just think it's that close to whether you beat the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl, whether and I think maybe this is the year that they do it.
Yeah, the Bills have been in those games before,
Yeah.
so this could be the year. My quick prediction, I'm going Niners NFC Championship versus the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
A couple 1 and 2 teams right now, so I'm not riding the hot hand. I don't know. I think the Niners get it done this year. I think they go to the Super Bowl again, and I think they win it. I think we have a Ravens-Chiefs rematch of AFC as of last year, and then I think the Ravens get it done. We see Lamar versus the Niners.
Yeah, they had a good game yesterday.
They looked good, except in the fourth quarter.
Right.
But that's my prediction. So
they just ran the ball the whole game. I mean, that's the one thing with the Ravens that's always comes down to AFC Championship game, whatever it is. Are they going to be able to drop back on third down and throw the football? Because if they have to do that, if they're behind, if they're ahead, I think that they always, if the Ravens are a team, when Bill used to talk about this is a team that you can't let them get ahead. Yeah. Because once they get ahead, they can dictate how the game is going to be played. And they just held on against the Cowboys, but it's hard to come back because, especially now with Derrick Henry and this rushing attack, if they're ahead, they can run the ball. I think it was 70% of the time yesterday.
Crazy.
So that's one of those things that, like we talk about, it just takes that. Yeah. If they come out and it's the AFC Championship game in 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is, and they get ahead on the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs are a different animal, too, because we've seen them come down from ridiculous amounts. But a Baltimore team that gets ahead and can always stay ahead, then they're hard to beat.
Yeah, and the storyline in the AFC Championship last year was that you can't pass on the Chiefs and you should run the football, and the Ravens just did not do that.
Yeah.
And so I think they learn from their mistakes and they get by the Chiefs this year. But
all right,
that wraps it up for Quick Snap episode 5. And thanks again. Subscribe, follow, and comment, like wherever you're watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right.